This dynamic can lead to situations when an incident, a statement, or a circumstance can cause a relatively sudden shift in the perception of whether someone is in an in-group or an out-group. Whether we look at past events like the O.J. Simpson trial, or more recent ones like the shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, or the Colin Kaepernick-inspired protests by football players and other athletes, black and white people who had felt connected before the incident often found themselves suddenly feeling different from each other afterward, knowing that there were two completely different reactions based on race, the level of trust they had in the police or justice system, and how it impacted them personally. Outgroup homogeneity. We also relate to groups differently, depending on both their in-group, out-group status and their dominant, non-dominant status in our societal structure. For example, in the United States, whites, men, heterosexuals, and Christians are dominant cultural in-groups based on their prevalence and power. Once people have been labeled as members of an out-group, they tend to be stripped of their individuality. This has been labeled the outgroup homogeneity effect. We tend to see the groups to which we belong as a collection of diverse and unique individuals, while other groups are perceived to be a uniform assortment of clones and sycophants, predictable, derivative, and otherwise unoriginal. Taken to the extreme, de-individualization leads to dehumanization, which has obvious large-scale consequences, as proven throughout history. Think about how much easier it is to distinguish people of one's own race versus distinguishing those of a different race. All of the statements that we have heard about how all of them look the same bear this out. Studies have consistently shown that we attribute greater personal variability to the members of our own in-group, while seeing members of out-groups as largely similar in their personalities, tastes, preferences, and motivations. In one study, 90 sorority members were asked to judge the degree of differences among their own sorority sisters and two other groups. Every single participant judged their own sorority members to be more dissimilar than the members of the other groups. Let's think of this relative to how racial groups are seen in the United States. Who is more likely to see the differences between African Americans, Caribbean-born blacks, and African-born blacks? People from those groups or people from other racial groups? The same is true for Hispanics or Latinos from Cuba, Mexico, and Puerto Rico, Asians from China, Vietnam, Korea, or Japan, and whites who are Jewish, Mormon, or Catholic, and from completely different cultural backgrounds. From the outside, many of these groups seem homogeneous, but from the inside we know that significant differences can exist. An unfortunate consequence of the outgroup homogeneity effect is that it makes it easier and more automatic to stereotype groups of which you do not consider yourself a member. If we already tend to view members of outgroups as being homogeneous, deploying stereotypes becomes not only easier, but in a sense a logical, though problematic, labeling device. As I wrote in my book, Everyday Bias, this stereotyping contributes dramatically to conscious and unconscious biases that impact not only our beliefs, but our behaviors as well. Even if you are a member of a group, your survival isn't guaranteed, especially if your identity is aligned with a non-dominant group. People who are in outgroups societally have to pay more attention to group identity in order to survive than do people who belong to in-groups. If you are a woman in a predominantly male environment, it is more necessary for you to pay attention to the gender dynamics of the group in order to be safe and successful in it. This concern is exacerbated by public examples of misogyny or sexism, as we have seen with Bill Cosby, Roger Ailes, Bill O'Reilly, and Harvey Weinstein, and as we saw during the 2016 presidential election with Donald Trump. The same is true for race. People of color are more likely to be aware of dynamics of race than whites are because they need to be in order to survive and thrive in a white-dominant culture.